Hey guys, today's lecture we're going to talk about political parties and elections, how they affect elections. Political parties are simply organized groups. They attempt to influence the government by electing their members to important government offices, thereby controlling government. So, the political party, they want to be the decision maker for government. They want to control all of government to influence, to put into practice their policies, their ideas. Political parties, they extend popular political participation, they promote effective choice, and they help smooth the flow of political business in Congress. So let's look at these. Political parties arose from the electoral process. For most of the history of the United States, two major parties. What are the two major parties in the U.S.? Exactly, the Republican and the Democrats. So for most of our history, the two major parties have had enough of an organized presence to oppose each other in elections in most of the nation's towns, cities, counties. So they've had enough of a presence that they were able to oppose each other in county elections, and you can even say state elections. This history, this opposition, makes the American party system one of the oldest political institutions, one of the oldest political happenings in the history of democracy. Political parties play a traditionally important role in elections. In earlier times, the parties had near monopoly control over the electoral process. Really, the big thing is they had a near monopoly. They basically controlled. They selected. The party elite selected the candidate. We, the people, we just had to deal with who they chose. Well, what if the Republican Party elite choose somebody to run as a Republican that we don't like? Well, we, the people, had two options: take it or leave it. It was either vote for the Republican we didn't like, or worse, vote for the Democrat. Same thing for the Democratic Party. However, in recent years, we see that the party has lost this monopoly to select candidates simply because these candidates have decided to not work within the party framework. They have decided to step outside and do their own thing. They will accept party assistance, but they're not going to be bound by party tradition. Can you think of somebody that's been elected that we have seen do that recently? And if we're talking politics and recent, that could be anywhere between the last 2 to 20 years, and this would still be recent. Have we seen anybody? Yes, we have. It's President Trump. He was not the traditional Republican. He did not follow the traditional Republican, I don't want to say platform, but playing field. He did things his own way, regardless of how the party felt or what the party wanted. Since the party has lost this near monopoly, since they've lost their control to select a candidate, are they no longer important? No, actually, they're still important. There are still things that they do. Remember, parties want to control government. They want to get people elected to important government positions to control government. There are things the party does to help them reach this goal. So parties recruit candidates. They don't select, they don't choose them, but they do help recruit them. Parties recruit candidates for national, state, and local offices. The party leaders identify strong candidates and entice them. They encourage them to campaign. When they are looking for a candidate, when they are looking for a possible candidate, we are looking for a few things. Number one, charisma. You have to be very charismatic. You have to appeal to a number of people, businesses, this type of thing. Why? To get elected, what do you need? Money. You need money to get elected. As a candidate, you spend a lot of time asking people, asking businesses for financial donations. So you need to have the charisma to be able to ask for money and convince people to give it to you. Second thing that the party is concerned about is your background. You have to have a near flawless background. I use the example, it's like the party convinces you, or they want you to run for office. So the party elite will say, hey, come eat lunch with us. So they're talking to John Doe. So John goes to meet with the party elite. And while John is meeting with the party elite sends somebody over. They go into John's house, they go into his bedroom, and they start looking in his closet. What are they looking for in John's closet? They're looking for skeletons. What does the term skeletons in the closet mean? Things in your background, things in your history, things in your past that you have done. Why is the party concerned about past actions that you may have hidden? Well, once you become the party nominee, you're not only representing yourself, you're also representing the party. If you have done something in the past that makes you look bad, not only do you look bad, but the party also looks bad. A few years ago, once again, this is politics, we had a Democratic senator. Her name was Claire McCaskill. She represented the state of Missouri. The Republicans thought she was weak. They thought they could beat her. And the Republicans were right. She was in a very, very weak position. She was beatable for the Missouri U.S. Senate race. Well, the Republican who got the nomination for U.S. Senate guy, I can't remember his first name, but his last name was Aiken. Well, one day, candidate Aiken is giving an interview, and he's asked about abortion. And he gives the Republican line, standard line, no abortion. So there's a follow-up question. Well, what about in the case of rape or incest? And his answer, this is his true answer. It is his understanding that in the case of rape, if it is a real rape, if the woman truly does not want to participate, her body shuts down and she cannot get pregnant. It is physically impossible for her to get pregnant. Gentlemen, if you don't know, that's not how that happens. Let me tell you that. But that was his answer. How did the Republican Party react? They dropped him like a hot potato. No support. They just tried to distance him. Why? Does the entire Republican Party believe that? No, not in the least. You know it and I know it. The entire Republican Party does not believe that. But as an individual who is running as a Republican, as a member of the Republican Party, your beliefs, your actions influence or they affect. They make the entire party look bad. So this is why the party wants to make sure you have a flawless or near flawless background when they're trying to recruit you. Parties organize nominations. Nominations are the process through which political parties select their candidates for election to public office. If we look under Article 1, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution, this says that the states have the power to set the time, the place, the manner of election. It reserves to Congress the power to make such laws if it chooses to do so. However, the laws in the Constitution are silent on nominations, setting only age and citizenship requirement for candidates. So, as we are going through our nominating process, is also called our primary process. How many people can run for office? As many as they want. At the beginning of the process, how many can run for office? As many as they want. If you go back to the Republican, the candidate Aiken, I just talked about a minute ago. How many people could run to represent the Republican Party or run for U.S. Senator from Missouri representing the Republican Party? At the beginning of the process, as many as they want. We're going to have our primary process. We are going to try to narrow it down to one. So what we see is that the states, they will pick our primary election day. In Texas, it's in March. But it is actually the party that runs the primary election. They will select the polling places. They will rent the voting equipment, whether it's electronic, and mostly electronic these days, but whether it's a paper ballot, it's the party that will decide how the names are listed. If there's multiple people running for the same position on the ballot, how the names are listed. So the parties do a lot to organize nominations. Parties help get out the vote. Once you win your party nomination, once you win that primary, we know that you are the Republican running for this position, or we know you are the Democrat running for this position. This is when the election period starts. You are now running for election. The first electoral step, the first thing they do to help you, is they can have voter registration drives. The party will try to register new voters. Now, do they want to register everybody that they can to vote? No. Why not? Why don't we want to register everybody to vote? Well, what if they don't vote for your party? Traditionally, we know women, minorities vote Democratic. Rural Anglo males vote Republican. So are the Republican parties going to go try to register? Are they going to have registration drives for minorities, for women? No, because they know that they are, I guess you could call it, they are registering the enemy, which is a harsh term, but they are registering people who are opposed to their views, their policies. But they are going to try to help you, the candidate. They are going to try to register people who will vote for you. Other things political parties can do. I've told you before. I think I should have just told you in the last lecture. What are those two finite resources we have? Time and money. This is very, very important because as candidates, we only have so much time, we only have so much money. We need to spend this wisely. If I'm a Democrat running for office, who in Texas, our primaries are broken down into the two parties. We have the Democratic primary. We have the Republican primary. You can only vote in one party primary in Texas. This is the law. You can only vote in one party primary. Who you voted for, is that public knowledge? No, unless what? Unless you tell somebody that you voted. Is that public knowledge? Yes, that is. This is a big deal. Parties, man, they are going to keep track of you. They're going to play Big Brother. They're going to use this information and they're going to give it to the candidates that are representing their party. I might give this information to the Democrat running for office. Why? If I see Jane Smith, if she has voted in the last 5 Democratic primaries, remember, this is public information. As a Democrat, am I going to go talk to Jane? Actually, no, I'm not. Why not? Well, she's voted Democrat in the last 5 Democratic primaries. Chances are she's a solid Democrat. Chances are I've already got her vote in the general election. So let's look at the next name on the list. Once again, John Doe. Well, John here, they voted Republican the last 5 primaries. Am I going to go talk to John? No. Why not? Once again, I'm Democrat, he's Republican. Chances are he's a solid Republican. No matter what I do, I'm not going to tell him. So I'm not going to I'm not going to waste my time. I'm not going to extend my limited resources trying to talk to people who will never vote for me, or trying to talk to people who I'm almost 100% will talk to me. Now, Mark over here, if we look at Mark's voting record in the last 5 primaries, he's voted Republican 3 times and Democratic twice. Are we going to talk to Mark? Yeah, we're going to go talk to Mark. How come? Because it looks like Mark can be swayed. It looks like Mark is not tied into one policy. I might be able, or to one, not policy, one party. I can probably convince Mark to vote for me. Parties facilitate voter choice. What do I mean by this? Parties, campaigns, these help the most by providing information when voters must choose among obscure candidates and vote on unclear referenda. How many levels of government do we have in the United States? We have 3. What are they? Highest to lowest. We have federal, we have state, we have local. This is going to be county and city. Mainly county is what we're talking about here. In an amusing coincidence, we have 3 levels on our ballot. Top of the ballot, middle of the ballot, bottom of the ballot. 3 levels of government, 3 sections of the ballot. Coincidence? No, not at all. Top of the ballot coincides with the federal government. Middle section of the ballot coincides with state government. Bottom of the ballot going to be our county government, our lower level of government. Top of the ballot, federal government. These are what I call the sexy races. A lot of money is spent. I mean, if you're running for president, we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars is being spent here. Sexy. We see commercials. We know who these people are. We have an idea. Even our U.S. senators, our U.S. House members, there's a lot of money being spent. Now, the middle section, the middle of the ballot, are state officials. There's still some money being spent here, but we tend not to pay as much attention. We have a general idea who they are, but not really what they stand for, not really what they do. But they affect our daily lives. We do pay attention to them. Now, let's get to the bottom of the ballot, this county elections. We pay attention to federal somewhat. We somewhat pay attention to state. Do we pay attention to county? Honestly, no, we don't. Why not? Too many choices. I live in Harris County, and in November of 2018, in Harris County, we had 53 county judges. 53 races for county judges. Then this was not all of the county races, county elections. This is just a portion of them. 53. Who's going to take the time out to go and research 53 people? Well, now it's got to be 106 if there's, one from each party running. Who's going to go research 106 candidates for a county judge position? Very, very few of us. Well, then, how do we know who to vote for? Well, it's real simple, because when we vote, we're looking at a name, and following the name, there's a dash, and then there's a letter. That letter is going to be -R, -D. It might say Libertarian. This indicates which party they represent. We're focusing on the -D and the -R. This is the Republican running. This is the Democrat running. Well, how does that help us decide? Well, if I'm a Democrat and the Democrat's running, well, obviously the Democrat's the one that we're the same party, so they must think like I do, so they're the best ones to vote for. Republicans, same way. If I'm a Republican and there's a Republican running, well, obviously they're the best ones to vote for. So we see that parties help facilitate voter choice, especially on down ballots, the lower level of ballots that don't get a lot of newsprint, that don't get a lot of love, if you will. Parties organize power in Congress. Parties in campaigns, I messed up, I'm sorry. Parties' relationships and influences on governmental institutions are very significant. What I mean by this is, we talked about the committee system. The committee system's the core system of Congress. Each party gets X number of people on a committee. What determines how many committee seats that they get? If there's 21 seats on this committee, how do we know how many seats the Republican gets? How do we know how many seats the Democrats get? It's going to go to party power in Congress. It is pro-rated. If Republicans have 60% of the seats in Congress, they're going to have 60% of the seats on the committees. So this is very, very important. The individual committee assignments, which assignment which committee you are assigned to, this is based on party leadership. This is going to be the decision of the Speaker of the House, or the House Majority Leader, or the House Minority Leader. Presidents need political parties. Talked about this in the last lecture. The president depends on Congress people. They depend on their party people to support legislative initiatives to help get bills passed that are going to support the president's ideas. The United States party system. In the United States, we have something called the two-party system. The two-party system, this is a political system in which only two political parties have a realistic opportunity to compete effectively for control. This two-party system has dominated American politics, although which particular parties were in competition has changed over time, ending with today's Democratic and Republican Party. So two-party system, if you're running for president, if you're running for a U.S. Senate seat, U.S. House seat, realistically, to win, you have to be a member of the Republican Party or a member of the Democratic Party. If we look at today's U.S. Senate, how many senators are there? We've already talked about this. You've been tested on it. There's 100 senators, 50 or 2 from each state, 50 states. How many of these belong to major parties? How many of these are independents or belong to a third party? Right now, there's only 2. There's only 2 senators that are independents, that do not belong to any of the major parties. So 2% of the U.S. Senate. You really want to be a member of the Republican Party or the Democratic Party if you are running for office. Electoral realignments define party systems in American history. An electoral realignment defines the point in history when a new party supplants the ruling party, becoming in turn the dominant political force. Okay, plain English. There are some things that have to occur to have an electoral realignment. The minority party has to become the majority party. The minority party has to become the majority party. They must control both the legislative and the executive branch. So one party, Republican just because, Republican must control the White House. So there must be a Republican in the White House as president, and the Republican Party must have a majority of seats in Congress. This is both the Senate and the U.S. House of Representatives. The third requirement for an electoral realignment, there's a time frame. This party must maintain control for an amount of years, usually 30 to 40 years. But for those to occur, when that happens, we have had an electoral realignment. There is some agreement among the different scholars that the United States has had 5 different realignments in American history. These have taken place in 1800, 1828, 1860, 1896, and 1932. Let's look at these, or what causes realignments before we go. Historically, realignments occur when new issues and economic crisis combines to mobilize citizens to re-examine our party loyalties, and our political party loyalties shift. Now, let's look at these realignments, these party systems. The first party system, Federalist and Jeffersonian Republicans. In 1790, the first party system emerged. It pits the Federalists against the Jeffersonian Republicans. The Federalists, they support business. They like the idea of tariffs on imports. They want to see the federal government assume the state's Revolutionary War debts. They would like to see the creation of a national bank. They would like to see a resumption of commercial ties, of commercial trade with Great Britain. The Jeffersonian Republicans. This group promotes agrarian interest, free trade, so no imports, and they want to explore friendship with France. They want to open up trade with France. In 1800, we elect somebody president that brings one of these groups to national power. Who do we elect president in 1800? And which group do they bring? Look at the slide, because some of you still don't know yet. Look at the slide. We elect Thomas Jefferson. How do you know this? Because the Jeffersonian Republicans. So in 1800, Jefferson wins the presidency, taking the party to power. The Federalists, the Jeffersonian Republicans oppose each other. However, we have a misunderstanding. We have a skirmish again with Great Britain. It's called the War of 1812. Well, after the War of 1812, it is discovered that the Federalists, most of them actually had pro-British sympathies. They wanted to aid and abet our enemies. This causes the Federalist Party to collapse. This leaves the Jeffersonian Republicans as the only party. We enter into what is called the era of good feeling because of the absence of party competition. They can do whatever they want. It is this period, the 1820s, 1830s, Jeffersonian Republicans become known as the Democrats. And this is going to lead to our second party system, the Democrats versus the Whigs. We see the formation of a new party system called the Whigs. This was in response to to Jackson, President Jackson, Democrat, being elected. He ran on a platform. He did win 2 presidential terms. He ran on free trade, policies that would make it easier to borrow money. He supported agriculture, so big business did not like him. So we see the Whig Party form, and they are able to win. They were able to end the Democratic dominance with the election of William Henry Harrison, president. Now, during the 1830s and 1840s, the Democrats and Whigs both built party organizations by expanding their right to vote. They made sure that freed Anglo males were able to vote. We got rid of property ownership or poll taxes for Anglos, that kind of thing. Each side is trying to increase their voting base. 1850s. Each party has an issue. Each party is grappling with the same issue in the 1850s. That issue is slavery. Members from both parties, members from the Whigs and Democrats, some of them want to keep slavery, some of them want to abolish slavery. Finally, in 1856, this issue of slavery is too much for the Whig Party to overcome. it dissolves. So the pro-slavery people, they went and joined the Democratic Party. The anti-slavery people, man, they're partyless. They're looking around. And we see this new political party, it's a third party, called the Republicans. They say, hey, we're anti-slavery too. Come join our party. So the former Whig members, they go and join the Republican Party. This means in 1860, we have another presidential election, and we elect Republican Abraham Lincoln. The election of President Lincoln sparked Southern secession and the Civil War. So this is going to be our Civil War and post-Civil War party system, our Republicans and Democrats. President Lincoln relied on support from Republican governors and state legislatures to defeat the Confederacy in 1865. After the war, Republicans sought to convert the South from Democratic to Republican through Reconstruction programs, through the Reconstruction Acts of 1867. However, didn't work. Southern resistance ended Reconstruction efforts and gave the former Confederate states full Union memberships and control of their affairs. African Americans who had gained rights under these Republican efforts were deprived of their political rights despite post-Civil War agreements. The Republican Party remains the North's party, the party of the North. They have support from a strong business and middle-class system. Democrats, this is still the party of the South, agrarian, so farmers. They did have some support from northern working-class groups and immigrants. System of 1896, still Republicans and Democrats. The 1890s, we see rapid social and economic changes lead to the emergence of protest parties. The best known protest party was something called the Populist Party. It won strong national support. When these third parties gain in popularity, they start to gain in power. They get the attention of these two major parties. Why? Well, they're getting power, they're getting voters from somewhere. It has to come from one of the two parties. So what we will see is that these two major parties, they will often shift their point of view. They will shift to match that of the third party. Why? It's so they can go to this third party and say, hey, we believe the same way as you do. We're bigger, we're more powerful. Why doesn't your party merge with us? The third party tends to merge with the major party, making the major party stronger. So what we see, keep this in mind, we see the Populist Party merge with the Democrats. Now, the Republican Party, representing Northern and Midwestern business interests, this concerned them. This increase in Democratic power concerned them, and they sought to defeat or at least contain the populist Democratic alliance. In 1896, Republican William McKinley wins the presidency, and Democrats found themselves holding power only in the South and the far West. So Democrats at the national level were very weak, held very few seats, like I said, deep South, far West. The Republicans in this era, well, for the next 36 years, Republicans were the nation's major party. Democrats were too weak to offer much opposition. The Republicans of this era were known as the American Business Party. They advocated, they wanted low taxes, high tariffs on imports, minimal government regulation. They wanted low taxes, high tariffs on imports, and minimal governmental regulation. They wanted the economy to grow. The New Deal system. Soon after the Republican Herbert Hoover becomes president, the economy collapsed. 1928, we elect Hoover. 1929, the stock market crashes, the Great Depression starts. Is it President Hoover's fault? No. But as president, does he get blamed? Yes, he does. But as a result of this, Americans felt that the economic hardship produced by the Great Depression was the Republicans' fault. It was their responsibility to get us out. Well, unfortunately, Republicans couldn't get us out. So in 1932, Americans elected Democrat Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR, along with the Democratic Congress. We put the Democrats in charge of the White House. We put the Democrats in charge of Congress. FDR, President Roosevelt, develops the New Deal. This is an economic recovery program. It substantially increased the national government's role in economic management. We mentioned this earlier. President Roosevelt, does he get credit for getting us out of the Depression? Yes, he does, thanks to this New Deal. This New Deal, this getting us out of the Depression, revitalized the Democratic Party. And it creates this coalition. Coalition consists of unionized workers, upper middle class intellectuals and professionals, Southern farmers, Jews, Catholics, so those who practice the Jewish faith, those who practice the Catholic faith, and African Americans. Creates this coalition that keeps the Democratic Party in charge for the next 36 years, up till 1968. During the 1960s, the New Deal coalition is severely strained by conflict over civil rights and Vietnam. These two factions within the Democratic Party provided an opportunity for the GOP, the Republicans, GOP stands for Grand Old Party, GOP to return to power in 1968 with President Richard Nixon. Okay, so these, I said 5 realignments. Here they are. The first party system, second party system, Civil War and post-Civil War, system of 1896, and the New Deal system. The end of the New Deal system leads to what is called the contemporary American party system. Presidential candidate Barry Goldwater, Republican, he helps crystallize, in the early 1960s, he helps crystallize what's going to become the Republican Party themes. He lays the groundwork for what candidate Nixon, soon to be President Nixon, calls his Southern strategy. Southern strategy. This consists of, he's arguing, they're running on 3 ideas. A platform of 3 things. Wants to see reduced taxation and spending. Like to see less government economic regulation, so less government involvement with the economy, less laws. And the third, he would like to see the elimination of many federal social programs. So Nixon takes these 3 ideas and incorporates what he calls the Southern strategies. Southern strategy. He's running on these 3 things. People in the South really, really love 3 of these ideas. Or 2 of these 3 ideas, excuse me. Which 3? Well, we love reduced taxation and spending. reduce taxes. If the government's taking less of our tax money, that means more money for us. So what's the second one? Do we care about less government economic regulation or the elimination of many federal social programs? We're still an agrarian society here in the South. We don't very much care about government economic regulation. We do care about the elimination of many federal social programs. Why? 1850s, 1860s, what was going on in the South? What was the South opposed to? The Civil Rights Movement. And stereotypically, who benefits from these government, these federal social programs? Minorities. Stereotypically African Americans. So in the late 1960s, candidate Nixon comes down to the South and says, Southerners, if you vote for me, I will reduce your taxes and I will reduce federal programs that aid the minorities that you don't particularly care for. How do Southerners react? Oh, I'm all in on this. I want to vote for this. How many times can I vote for you again? It is this Southern strategy that allows President Nixon to break Democratic control of the executive branch, Democratic control of the White House, and we see the end of the New Deal system. Now, I have said, or you can look at these party systems, and usually one party is in control for 30 to 40 years. Did we have a realignment in 1968 with the election of President Nixon? No. What we have entered is what is called an era of divided government. I'm going to use a term, I've never seen it, but it makes sense. These alignments, we have unified government. One party is in charge of the executive branch, one party is in charge of the legislative branch for a number of years. So it's unified. Divided government is, there's a breakdown somewhere. One party is in control of the executive branch. The other party is in control of one or both chambers of Congress. For example, a Democrat might be president. The Republicans might control the Senate. Democrats control the House. Divided government because Democrats don't have total control. Democratic president, Republicans control both chambers, divided. Republican president, Republican Senate, Democratic House. Divided government. Now, since 1968, have we ever had a time where we've had unified government, where we've had one party in control of the executive branch and both chambers of the legislature? Yes, we have. How come that wasn't an electoral realignment? Remember, that last step in the electoral realignment is a time frame. This party must control for 30, 40 years. We have not had that time frame. So we have not had another realignment since the end of the New Deal system in 1968. We've talked about two-party system. American third parties. Why are they important? Although America is defined as a two-party system, we've always had some third parties. And third parties are just parties that organize to compete against the two major American political parties. These third parties give voices to issue, or they give attention to things that are unattended by the major parties. Third parties have influenced American ideas and elections. Important third parties and independents have included the Populist Party, the Progressives. We've seen independents like Ross Perot from the Reform Party, Ralph Nader from the Green Party. They have influenced presidential elections. At the state level, 1998, we see Minnesota Governor Jesse Ventura. So they're important. They do serve a purpose. Can they win? Unfortunately, the answer here is no. They cannot win for a couple of reasons. If we are talking about the presidency, if we're talking about the U.S. Senate, most Americans believe that only the candidate from a major party can win an election, and that voting for a third party is a waste of a vote. Do we want to vote for a winner, or do we want to vote for a loser? We want to vote for a winner. We don't want to waste our vote. We don't want to waste our time. Well, what if we really, really love that third party? They're still not going to win. Why bother? Should we bother? Yes, we should, especially when it comes to president and the third party, presidential elections and the third party. Under federal election law, any minority party, any minor party, any third party that gets more than 5% of the presidential vote, they are entitled to federal funds until the next presidential election. So they are entitled to receive federal financial aid, federal funding from the government for the next 4 years. And can you imagine what a third party could do if it had consistent sources of funding from the government? Could they really get their message out? Could they be heard? Yeah, they could. So if you like a third party, vote for them. Understand they're probably not going to win, but if they can get 5% of the vote, they can do a lot with that money. They can do a lot more to further their goals, further than their ideas. Okay, I just talked about the president. I said they can't win at the president. It's difficult for them to win the presidency. And we talked about how many third parties or independents there are in the Senate. I'm going to focus in on the House of Representatives right now. House of Representatives, they are elected from districts. Our members, our House members, represent single-member districts. This means a single-member district is how many people do we elect to represent that district? Single means what? If you're a single, you are lucky, happy, I don't know. If you're single, how many are you? How many of there are you? One. Single member district, we have one person to represent this district. Once again, voters, we may like the third party, but we know chances are really, really good they're not going to win. So we don't want to waste our vote. So we're going to vote for the Republican. We're going to vote for the Democrat. We want to vote for somebody that at least has a chance to win. Voter psychological ties. This is party identification. Party identification is an individual voter's psychological ties to one party or another. Individuals develop party identification with the party that reflects our interest. Recently, Poll numbers have shown that American partisan ties have declined, but Americans continue to identify with either the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. So less people are identifying as a Republican, less people are identifying as a Democrat, but still a majority of Americans identify as a member or with the belief that one of the two major parties best represent them. Party identification. This is very important to us as voters. It gives us a stake in the election. It makes it attractive. It gives us a reason for voters to go to the poll. So another way I can phrase this is that it gives us a stake in the game. What do I mean by that? My in-person classes, I'll say, okay, who's your favorite football team? And somebody will give me their favorite team, and we'll just use the Texans as an example. Not my favorite team, by the way. It's not the Cowboys either. Relax. Somebody says, okay, I say, who's your favorite team? And somebody says, the Texans. Okay, that's fine. Why? What do you mean, why? Well, are you a player? Do you play for the Texans? When they win, when they succeed, when they win playoff games, do you gain more money? Do you get anything from it? Well, no, I'm not. I don't play for them. Okay. Or are you the owner of the team? Do you gain additional money when your team, does well? No, I don't get anything for it. Well, why are they your favorite team? What do you get out of this? What do you get from going to the games or watching the games on TV, spending $100 on your favorite players' jerseys? By the way, guys, wearing your favorite player's jersey does not actually help them win, right? Okay, just telling you. If you didn't know it, unfortunately, it's not true. What do you get out of it? You do not get any external items out of it. You don't get money. You're not famous. You don't get fame. You don't get fortune. What you do get is internal, intrinsic joy, internal or intrinsic happiness by supporting your team. Your support made your team win. This party identification is the same thing. It's going to encourage us to participate. We're going to go participate with the Republican Party, with the Democratic Party. Easiest way, we're going to go vote. We can do other things. We can put signs in our yards. We can attend rallies. We can host fundraisers. But it's this party identification that makes us want to participate. It gives us that stake in the game. At the end of Election Day, you and I, the voters, we make our decision on how we're going to vote, on who's going to win. And voters are going to decide based on party, on issues, on candidates. Partisan loyalty, party loyalty is important. I told you, a majority of voters identify with a major political party. This partisan identification predisposes many voters in favor of their party's candidates and against those of the opposing party. It creates these rose-colored glasses. It creates this bias. If we are a Republican, are we willing to listen to ideas from Democrats? Yeah, we're willing to listen. Are we willing to listen with an open mind? Not so much. With this partisan loyalty, this party loyalty, if we're a Republican, if we're a Democrat, we tend to believe, or we tend to look upon with disdain, ideas from the opposite party. they're the other party, they don't believe like we do, they could not come up with a good idea. Issues. Issues can shape an election. Most voters tend to cast their votes for those candidates they perceive to have their outlook on economic policy, foreign policy, or it could be some social or moral issues, immigration, abortion, same-sex rights, something like this. Voting on issues involves a mixture of the voter's judgment about the party's past behavior and hopes and fears about the party's future behavior. Candidate characteristics are more important in the media age. A candidate's personal attributes always influence voters' decision. We live in what is called a 24-hour news cycle. Any time of day or night, we can turn on news, we can turn on cable, CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, something. We can go to some cable news outlet and find political news. We can see candidates or elected officials talking. What we see, these personal attributes, do influence our decision. The most important characteristics that will affect our decision are going to be race, ethnicity, religion, social background. Voters, we will also pay attention to personality characteristics. Do they come across as decisive? Do they come across as honest? Do they come across as sleazy? Are they vigorous? Do they have the energy to do the job? These are all things we will judge, we will consider while we're watching them on TV. Voter turnout in the United States. I don't want to do this, so I'm going to make this extremely easy. Voter turnout in the United States is extremely low. Can I make that any easier? Let me repeat it. Voter turnout in the United States is extremely low. That's all you need to know. Money. Money is the mother's milk of politics. Money is what gets you elected. Modern national campaigns, especially president, they are fueled by enormous amounts of money. In a national race, millions of dollars are going to be spent on media time, on public opinion polls, and on media consultants. So, where does this money come from? Who donates? It can come from a multitude of sources. Individual donors. Politicians spend a great deal of time asking people for money. Many people contribute greatly, not only as donors, but also as fundraisers. We can host fundraisers. Well, let's talk about donation first. We can donate $2,800 directly to a candidate. We can then donate up to $5,000 to a political action committee, which can turn around, this political action committee, this PAC, they can turn around and donate this money to a candidate. We can donate unlimited sums to a super PAC, to a super political action committee, who can then spend this money supporting the candidate, buying airtime, sending out mailers, that kind of thing in support. So individuals, we can donate candidate contributions, political action committees, super PACs, party committees. National party committees, we can donate to them. They turn around and donate money to the candidate. This fundraiser. Hey, I'm having a fundraiser Saturday night, $100 a plate. Come pay me $100, have dinner, meet the candidate. All the money raised goes directly to the candidate's campaign. That's a fundraiser. Individuals can do this. Political action committees, PACs, I will talk about at a later date. Candidates. Can the candidates self-fund? Can the candidates fund their own campaign? Yes. By law, individuals have the right to spend their own money to campaign for office. This means that we see wealthy individuals will often contribute millions of their own dollars to their campaigns. Independent spending, 527 committees and 501c4s. These numbers, these names are from the section of the tax code. These can be called super PACs. I'll talk about those at a later date. Public funding. The Federal Election Campaign Act, or the FECA, provides for public funding of presidential campaigns. If you're running for office, as you seek the presidential nominations, candidates are eligible for dollar-to-dollar matching public funds. To qualify for matching funds, for dollar matching funds, the candidate must raise at least $5,000 and individual contributions of $250 or less. So, if you can get 20 of your closest friends and family to donate $250 to your presidential election campaign, you are now eligible to receive matching funds from the federal government. Any money raised after that, the government will match dollar for dollar. There's a catch. There is a hard cap. There is a limit to how much money you can get from the federal government. There's a limit to how much they will match. This means there is a hard limit to how much you can raise. And I'm sorry, I don't know what the hard cap is off the top of my head, but for an example, say if the hard cap is $1 million and you raise $1 million from personal contributions, from individual contributions, the government matches that $1 million. Once you've hit that million and they've matched $1 million, you cannot raise any more money. Well, what happens if you hit that $1 million cap 2 weeks before the election? You're in a world of hurt, is what's going to happen. It doesn't matter if there's still 2 weeks, you can't raise any more money. We no longer see the two major party candidates. We no longer see the Republicans or the Democrats accept public funding in the presidential race because they have discovered they can raise more money campaigning on their own. They can raise more money than that hard cap that the Federal Election Campaign Act creates.